In 2020, I was dealing with extreme depression to the point that I wasn't sure that I wanted to live anymore. I was pretty sure that I wanted to tap out. I made a conscious choice to not tap out and to commit to life no matter how hard it gets. It was just like this switch where I was like, I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to just prove that life is worth living to myself, no one else, just to myself. Because I think when I'm old, I'll be like, that was one heck of a ride. That was worth it. Even if there's heartbreak and you go broke and you're embarrassed about your state, like it'll be worth it in the end. That's what I told myself. I got really fit. I got mentally strong. I worked with a life coach, and he helped me build mental frameworks that changed my life that I'm still using today. I got physically so strong, the biggest, strongest I've ever been. I felt so good, so powerful. I was financially recovering from, the debt that I was in, and my business is failing and my work, just the disasters that I kind of gone through. I was in a great place. And one day I was doing farmer's carries and I started to, black out a little bit. Like, whoa, what's that? Something was off. And I went and did a little leg workout and started getting incredibly dizzy. And then like a wave that hit me, I had this moment where I was like, I'm having a stroke. I'm like, maybe I'm having a heart attack. I can't breathe. And I remember walking across the gym trying to get to the front desk so that I could call an ambulance. I was like going to ask them to call an ambulance. And the whole room, it's like when you watch like a James Bond movie and someone gets drugged, it's like the whole room distorts. Like it was like that. And I remember like walking up and I grabbed the counter and I just stood there. And the guy working the counter goes, what do you need? And I just looked at him and I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I need. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to call an ambulance, but I feel like I need an ambulance. So I kind of gathered myself, went over to my bag. I just chewed up 2 aspirin. I was like, if I'm having a heart attack, this will keep me from dying, hopefully, and I'll figure out what's going on. And then I kind of recovered. My central nervous system recovered. And I went home. I slept for 14 hours straight. Woke up the next morning, still felt really off. Felt something was very wrong. Like everything was off. So I went and saw my cardiologist. And that visit to the cardiologist changed my life. Mind you, I've been with this cardiologist since I was a kid. So I've been dealing with this cardiologist since I was like 10 years old-ish, somewhere in there, 9 or 10. And so he's a friend, my entire life. This has been my sort of who you go to to check in and make sure that everything's going well. And I haven't seen him in a few years. That was on me and my negligence. And I just knew something was off. He comes in to review my echocardiogram and all the tests. And he's gotten so much older. Now he got white hair and he's this older man. And we're talking a little bit. He's like, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is your valve is unchanged. You have moderate leakage in the valve, but you have an aneurysm in your aorta. And he drew a diagram of what that looks like. And I was like, how does this happen? Like, I didn't know this was a thing. He's like, yeah, there's about a 50% chance that someone with a bicuspid valve develops an aneurysm. Oh gosh, like, what does that mean? He's like, so what that means is this is life-threatening. You can't lift weights anymore. And I was just like, this whole identity that I just created, I really lost myself. I've been the party guy, been all that stuff. Now I'm this super healthy person. I'm doing breath work every day. I'm doing cold showers every single day. I'm mentally, spiritually aligned. I'm financially recovering. I am on this trajectory to success. And at the core of that is me being fit and strong. And he's telling me that I can't do this anymore. And I always say it was my Dallas Buyers Club moment. Like when he like ugly cries in the car, totally happened to me. Like I got out, like I kept it together kind of, and then got in the car and just sobbed. But he was like, yeah, like we need to get you a new cardiologist. This ends me being your doctor because this is so serious. You need a doctor that's closer to you. So it's like I'm saying goodbye to this old friend is what it felt like. And I'm like, this whole thing's happening where I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to have surgery. And they basically said, don't lift heavy weights. Don't really lift anything. No more than 40 pounds was the advisory. And they're like, we're going to watch it and see what happens. You'll probably have a surgery within a year. 1 year later, so that was in 2021. 1 year later, in April or May of 2022. I just started Twin, my ice bath as a service company, doing ice bath events all across Los Angeles, and wasn't doing great, wasn't recovering very well, was having some issues. I went in and they're like, hey, your valve is now failing. Your valve is showing signs that it's weakening and it's not going to get better. Well, you need to do surgery within the next 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I was really in the state of like, my whole strategy is volume events, work as hard as I can, show up, be everywhere, but also knowing like I have surgery coming up very soon. And it really mentally was challenging because each of those times that I heard the news about my heart, that dark voice of like, is it even worth it? Like, why are you even working hard? Like, what if it goes wrong? Like, what if you know, like that doubt, that voice to me, that's like the evil voice that's like telling you like you're not good enough, that you should just give up, that like it's not worth living. Like that's that dark, depressive thing that kind of shows up. That would show up each time, each of these visits. And it was like, man, this is like what I'm personally fighting against. And so I just kept rocking, kept doing events, I kept showing up. I really, really invested into like what I was doing. And then Plunge came along. I joined Plunge and I was going to keep pushing it. And then it got worse and worse to the point that like I really couldn't breathe properly. Like I was having early stages of heart failure. And I was like, okay, I have to do this surgery. So I had the surgery in February of last year, almost 1 year ago. And in that surgery, they replaced my aneurysm and my valve. So I have new aortic root and a new valve. And I immediately started doing rehab the next day. And for me, it was like when you wake up, you're like, wow, now I get to do this all over again. That whole I get to do this comes right back. And I worked with a couple coaches and a couple of really interesting, I would call them guides leading up to this. And there were two really important factors for anyone that listens that has a heart condition and needs some inspiration. The first thing is knowing that you can heal. It's completely possible to heal. It's completely possible for your body to accept new parts that aren't your own. This is not something that I really thought about a whole lot, but I worked with an energy healer going into it. And I spent a lot of time priming my body to accept a new valve and a new aortic root. And it's like, this is part of my body. It's safe, right, and good for it to be in my body. It belongs in my body. It is now my body. My body accepts, and I just over and over, just programming my body to accept this thing before it even happened. I donated my own blood prior to the surgery. So it was exhausting, but I flew to Montana multiple times to donate my own blood. So I would have it's called an autologous blood donation, so that if I needed a blood transfusion, I was getting my own blood because your body's going to respond to your own blood better than anyone else's.